Shalom, everyone. Hope everything is well and your Pesach preparations are going smoothly and you're being a wonderful help to your families in terms of their preparations. And it's with great sadness that I admit to you that I'm right now outside of Eretz Yisrael, and this Torah is coming outside of Eretz Yisrael. No, Ki Mitzion Teitzei Torah Dvar Hashem Yerushalayim. I hope soon, at least in the next video, to be able to be back in Eretz Yisrael to share with you Torah. But I'm here to celebrate Pesach with my family. Of course, it's important. Pesach is very much a family holiday, and therefore it's important to try to spend time with your family, especially on the Chagim. Although we hope L'Shana Haba, the Aradi Yisrael, next year will be in Yerushalayim celebrating Pesach like it's supposed to be spent in Eretz Yisrael. I was reading some statistics which are very disturbing, which have to do with the breakdown of the family units all over Western civilization, including in Am Yisrael. There's a divorce rate of between 40 and 60% depending on your ethnicity. There's a statistic I read that only 34% of all children, about a third of children, will live with both biological parents through the age of 18 in the United States. There's a real breakdown of the family units, and I think maybe the fundamental tragedy of our day is the breakdown of the family. And I think as we approach Pesach, as we're coming up to Shabbat HaGadol, it's important to meditate a little bit on the reasons for the Shibud Mitzrayim. What led to our Galut in Mitzrayim? And according to Chazal, the breakdown of the family home really had to do with Shibud Mitzrayim in the first place. And Pesach is really a celebration of its reunification. And of course, we must remember how we got to Mitzrayim in the first place. And of course, the story dates back to the story with Yosef and his brothers, that they didn't like him, they were jealous, the Ketona Pasim, they hated him, they conspired to kill him. And the Midrash says that because of the whole story with Yosef and his brothers, and that he was sold into slavery, Midah Keneged Midah, Bnei Yisrael were sold into slavery in Mitzrayim. And the tragic separation of that family, of the Beit Yaakov, was really what led to Bnei Yisrael going down to Mitzrayim in the first place. It's tragic. Yaakov was living for many years without knowing what happened to his beloved son Yosef. There's a big question in the commentaries about why didn't Yosef write a letter. There's seemingly a breakdown in the family of Yaakov. And it's that fragmentation of the Beit Yaakov which was the impetus and the reason for the Galut in the first place. Now, the theme of Pesach, I believe, is that Geula is the reunification of the Jewish home, and Pesach is that celebration. And it's interesting why we call Pesach Pesach, because that was just one little detail, one little facet of the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. There are so many bigger events that happens, except for the idea of Hashem Pasach al Batei Bnei Yisrael. Why is it called Pesach? So I'd like to suggest that Pesach is called Pesach because the defining greatness of the Pesach celebration is exactly that. Now, what am I referring to? It says Hashem Pasach al Batei Bnei Yisrael, that Hashem passed over the homes of Am Yisrael during Makat Bechorot. That Beitenu Hitzil. There's a focus on the Bayit. Hashem Pasach al Batei Bnei Yisrael, on the homes of Bnei Yisrael. That Beitenu Hitzil. He didn't save us, he saved our homes. We had to put the dam on the mashkof, on the home, to protect us. Pesach isn't just passing over the Jewish home. According to Rashi, Rashi says Kadosh Baruch Hu midaleg al batei bnei Yisrael. Hashem was leaping over, jumping over the homes of Bnei Yisrael. But according to Hasidic teaching, midaleg can also be interpreted as dancing. That Hashem pasach al batei bnei Yisrael, so Hashem is dancing on the homes of Bnei Yisrael. Hashem is rejoicing over the homes of Bnei Yisrael. Every time a Kadosh Baruch Hu came to a Jewish home, Hashem would dance, says this Hasidic teaching. There was a very deep teaching by Rav Tzadok Kohen Lublin. He says the Ish L'Shalosh Regalim corresponds to another one of the Avot. And he says that Pesach, interestingly enough, corresponds to Avraham Avinu. The Malachim came to visit Avraham in his tent on Pesach. Now, Avraham, of course, was famous for his home, for his tent. And therefore, maybe it makes sense that this is the holiday associated, according to Rav Tzadok, with Avraham Avinu. The emphasis on Pesach, more than any other of the Chagim, is on the family. And therefore, it makes sense that Avraham Avinu, known for his home, was the one associated with Pesach. The Geula comes about by Yocheved and Amram reuniting after they were separated. And it's interestingly enough pointed out that in Perek Yud Bet, in Sefer Shemot, the Perek of the beginning of Yetziat Mitzrayim, which we read of course, on the first day of Pesach, there are over 11 references to Bayit, to Mishpacha, in the first 29 Psukim, right? Over 11 references. Right? We talk about the Korban Pesach in Perek Yud Bet, and the Korban Pesach, of course, is supposed to be eaten together with your family. Veichu lehem ish sel lebayit avod sel lebayit. Right? And if there's not enough, you're supposed to bring family members or neighbors from around. Right? This is a family celebration. Of course, the mitzvah of Simchat Yom Tov is v'samachta lifnei Hashem Elokecha ata uvincha uvitecha. Now, this Shabbat is Shabbat Hagadol. And there's a very fascinating question that's brought up in the Haggadah, which when we get up to Magid, we start off with Kol dichvin yetei ve'echol. Everyone who's hungry, come and eat. Now, one of the famous questions asked on this is this a little bit too late to make an invitation? Here we are, sitting at our Pesach Seder. Everyone who we invited is already here. And now we're already in the middle of the meal, right? We're already well into the Seder. And now we're saying anyone who's hungry, come and eat? Right now we're inviting the poor, the hungry, to come and join us at our Seder? Shouldn't this have been done maybe a week before? Is it a little too late now? Maybe if we're going to open the door for Elie Navi, at least open the door for Kol Dichvin Yetei V'echol to shout it out to the community that everyone who's hungry, come and join us. Some answer that this is possibly comes from a custom to read the Haggadah on the Shabbat of Shabbat Hagadol, the Shabbat preceding Pesach. That's some custom to read the Haggadah during the afternoon of Shabbat Hagadol. And maybe this is a proclamation that was made during Shabbat Hagadol because this is a way of inviting people ahead of time to or join us at our Seder. And that's why we say it, and it kind of stuck into the Haggadah text, and that's why we recite it at Leil HaSeder. There's a story of a student who really wanted to spend the Seder with his Rebbe, but didn't have an invitation from his Rebbe. So he decided he stood outside the door of his Rebbe's home, and he put his ear to the door to listen to the Seder of the Rebbe. And he waited till the Rebbe got to Kol Dichvin Yetei V'echol. And so what did he do? He knocked on the door, and the Rebbe went to open, and he said, I would like to join, I'm hungry. And the Rebbe had no choice but to take him in. It wasn't me. Now, there's a beautiful custom in the Moroccan community, in the Sephardic community, of Memuna on the 8th day of Motzei Yom Tov, of Pesach. The entire family joins together to join the festivities, the celebration. Now, there's a beautiful teaching in Masechet Shabbat that says the following: Le'olam al yishna adam bano ben abanim shari b'shvil mishkal shnei shsal'im milat kton pasim shasai Yaakov leYosef yoter mishar bano nitkanu bo achiv nitzagal hadavar v'yardu l'Mitzrayim. Says the Gemara, how did we end up in Mitzrayim in the first place? Because of the Ktona Pasim that was a little bit nicer than the one that Yaakov made for his brothers. Right? That a little bit nicer, and that led to jealousy, which led to the whole story that ended up in Shibud Mitzrayim. That is what happened. That is the breakdown of the family, right? That results in Shibud Mitzrayim. Now, there's a very interesting focus in the Haggadah on the Arba Banim, the 4 sons in the Haggadah. And I think the emphasis is that the Torah is for all 4 children. Keneged Arba Banim Dibrat Torah. That you have to include all types of children. You have to talk to the Chacham, the Tam, the Rasha, the Shein Dali Shol. And maybe we do that, and that's a focus of the evening of Leil HaSeder, because that's part of the tikkun, the rectification for Shibud Mitzrayim. Bring the family together. Bring all types of people together. All parts of the family, even those who are not on the highest level, even those who aren't so connected, right? Bring them into the fold, because that is part of the tikkun of Pesach. The Haftarah that we read the Shabbat of Shabbat Hagadol is from Malachi. And the very end of Malachi, the very end of the Haftarah, we recite the prophecy that Hinei Anochi Sholech Lachem et Eliyahu Hanavi Lifnei Val Yom Hashem Hagadol V'Hanora. That Hashem will send us Eliyahu Hanavi before the great and awesome day, Yom Hagadol V'Hanora. And there's a discussion in the commentaries, what is this Yom Hagadol V'Hanora referring to? Right? Some people say it's the day of the arrival of Mashiach. Some people say it's the day of Tchiat HaMetim. Some say it's Gog HaMagog. And there's one interesting answer that says that the Shabbat of Shabbat Hagadol is called Shabbat Hagadol because of this prophecy, because of this haftarah that we read of Hinei Anochi Sholachem et Eliyahu Hanavi Lifnei Vo Yom Hashem Hagadol V'Hanora. That's why we call it Shabbat Hagadol, right? And it's interesting to note that the prophecy is V'Heshiv Lev Avot Al Banim V'Lev Banim Al Avotam. What is Eliyahu Hanavi going to do before this great and awesome day of Mashiach, before the Geula? V'Heshiv Lev Avot Al Banim V'Lev Banim Al Avotam. He's going to turn the hearts of the children to the parents, and the hearts of the parents to the children. He's going to bring the reunification of the family, because that is what's necessary for Geula. That is Geula, when the family comes together. And that's why the main mitzvah of the night is V'Gada Tel Levincha V'Yomahu, to tell the story over to the children. There should be a relationship between the family, between the parents and the children. And Galut, I think we understand now, comes from the breakdown of the family. And we read this haftarah before Pesach, when there are many parents and children who are coming together, maybe more than any other night of the year, to remind us of the idea of the family coming together for our Geula. There is a teaching by Rav Hirsch that I heard from my Rebbe Rav Machlis, that he says on one of my favorite songs actually in the Haggadah of Yibneh Beito B'Karov, right? Yivneh Beito B'Karov. And there's many discussions, many interpretations about what this means. Of course, the normative understanding is Yivnei Beito B'Karov, that God will rebuild the home speedily, is referring to the Beit HaMikdash. However, says Rav Hirsch, Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, a very beautiful interpretation. He says, no, it's not referring to the Beit HaMikdash. Yivnei Beito B'Karov is referring to our home, the Jewish home. Yivnei Beito B'Karov, that Hashem will rebuild our home again. There will no longer be a breakdown of the family unit. The families will come together. And that is the tikkun, that is Geula. In some families, Pesach is the only time that the family comes together. Multi-generational people, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, grandparents, all coming together. And it's beautiful. My Seder, we talk about what our grandparents used to do, what they went through, the experience of Pesach and the Holocaust. How my grandmother in Auschwitz would stay all the way till the end of the Seder, no matter how late it was, despite ill health and old age. And that's part of the experience. It's part of the Pesach experience, the family experience. And some people are very focused on getting in as many divrei Torah and so on and so forth. But I don't believe that's the real focus of the night. I believe that even more important is the experience of the family coming together. It says Hashem Pasach al B'tei B'nai Yisrael, because Hashem is dancing, celebrating the coming together of the family. And of course, we're all occupied now with our preparations of getting rid of the chametz from our homes. And in the literature, the rabbinic literature, especially in the Hasidic literature, chametz signifies ga'ava, kavod, arrogance, honor. And we have to get rid of the arrogance and rid of the honor. And my Rebbe Rav Machlis had a beautiful insight. He says that so many fights, so many problems in families aren't reconciled because they're too arrogant. Father's not speaking to sons, mother's not speaking to daughters, sisters, brothers, aunts, uncles, cousins, right? Because they should come to me first. Why should I go to them? They started it. I didn't start it, right? It's their fault. That's all because of kavod, because of ga'ava. And therefore, in preparation for Pesach, the celebration of the coming together of the family, we have to get rid of that chametz, get rid of that kavod, get rid of the ga'ava, which is getting in the way of reconciliation and family bonding. Rosh Shlomo Carlebach says that chametz asur b'mashu, it says in Shulchan Aruch that even a little tiny crumb is asur on Pesach. Right? Maybe even a little bit of kavod, a little bit of gava, anything that's going to get in between you and your family, we have to get rid of for Pesach, even a little crumb. And so often, these little crumbs get in the way of family relationships. Little things, little insignificant discussions or arguments, right, get in the way of families coming together. So before Pesach, when the families do come together, we have to eradicate that chametz, even a little bit. And Bezrat Hashem, through doing so, we will receive the fulfillment of the prophecy. It says in Yechezkel, Perek Chavchet, Pasuk Chavhei, Ko Amar Hashem Elokim b'kabetzi et Beit Yisrael min hamim, that I will gather you in from the Gentiles. Asher nafotzu bam v'nidashti bam leinei hagoyim, and I will gather you in and sanctify you sanctify you in the eyes of the Gentiles. Ve'yashvu alat matam, ve'yashvu alel levetach uvanu batim. And Hashem says, then I will return you to Eretz Yisrael, and you will dwell there securely. Uvanu batim, and we rebuild our home, because that's the Geula. Baruch Hashem, now in Eretz Yisrael, beautiful Jewish homes all over the land, wherever you go, all over Yerushalayim, Chutz Yerushalayim, the Golan, the Galil, the Merkaz. The rebuilding of the Jewish home, the rebuilding of Am Yisrael is happening before our eyes. And Bezrat Hashem, this Pesach will bring about our future Geula. The Geula will all rebuild and return our homes to Eretz Yisrael. Chag Kasher b'Sameach, everybody.